Good afternoon, and welcome to the One Cell, One Light radio show with Dr. Hildegarde Staninger. That's me, commonly known as Dr. Hildy. I have a very special show today for our whole 2 hours and our title is Raw Sugar Juice. My guests are Miss Rey Koo, owner of Sugarcane Juice, and acupuncturist Dr. Daniel Hutchinson. Dr. Hutchinson is going to be joining us as he comes on board, and I think Miss Rey Koo is online with me right now. Are you there, Rey? I don't know. We lost her when we were just getting on the show. Oh, and audience, we can hear the ring. We're trying to get her. Hello, Rey. This is Dr. Hildy. We're live on the radio.
Hi, Dr. Hildy. How are you?
I am very well, dear. I was telling the audience that my show today is on raw sugar juice, and it's diversity, which is raw sugar cane juice and the diversity, with yourself, Rey Koo, owner of Raw Sugar Juice, and also with a colleague and friend of yours, acupuncturist Dr. Daniel Hutchinson. He's going to join us as soon as we can get him connected on the line. And what I didn't get a chance to tell the audience that I'd like you to tell them a little about your company and what the company specializes in, which is the sugar juice, and then we can go into the history and everything of sugar. And audience, don't get confused with crystallized sugar that you buy in a bag at a grocery store or at other stores. We're talking about raw cane juice, which comes from the sugar cane. Okay, Rey?
That's correct. Yes. Well, thank you for having me on the show, Dr. Hildy. And I wanted to first start off with a little discussion on the history of sugar cane. And it was actually first discovered in 2 different places, and one was in Polynesia, and that was the first documentation. Actually, there were drawings of this particular tall reed grass. And at the same time, in India, there was also documentation of the sweet grass. By 510 AD, Persia was actually the first country that had a written documentation of this and said that they, in the midst of their invasion of India, had discovered this particular sweet gold, and it was sugar cane. And so at that point, the king of Persia was very wise, and he saw that there was going to be like an endless possibility with this particular reed, and that he was going to somehow extract the honey from this reed and not have to rely on the bees to extract this honey. And so from the point of discovery, he made it so that the sugar cane was basically like this guarded treasure of Persia. And he kept it guarded and kept it for Persia for a period of time, but then the Arab nations began to invade Persia, and at that point they stole the secrets. And it was one of like their great finds during their conquest, and they figured out how sugar was being extracted at that point from the reed. And so, and that was about 642 AD. When the Arabs got a hold of it, they just went crazy. They started immediately looking for real estate. They figured, there must be like cheaper ways we can grow this, and we're going to grow lots of it. And so, of course, they naturally started to plant this all over North Africa and also southern Spain, which those were like somewhat like sub-Mediterranean weather. So
right, it had the ideal weather, Rey, right, for growing this crop.
Pardon?
It had the ideal weather in those tropical zones.
Yes,
because sugar
exactly.
cane, as a reed, it needs water like a good muckland, and it needs water and tropical areas because it won't grow in freezing ice weather.
No, not at all. I mean, it does grow in sub-Mediterranean areas. I mean, that's why it does grow here in California, like the sugarcane juice that we use is extracted from plants here. But the optimal growth area is like tropical, and that's when you get a higher yield even in the juice. But at this point, like in 642, they were just going with the best type of weather that they could use at that point, which, like Egypt, I mean, today, sugarcane juice is drank on the streets and in coffee shops. I mean, it's like a common libation that they have for energy, and so it's still being grown there in Egypt.
Right, and in these growing in these areas, what you're basically saying too to the audience, Ray, is that it has a long history. It even has, as the king of merchants in dealing with sugar on the international side, was the Chinese with the Olmecs, and then its expansion when they came into Hawaii and exposed those sugarcane industries, meaning before they became industry, commercialized. It was free trade in that as the sweet crop commodity for those times. Yes. And it's whoever was the best, if you want to put it, merchant, as in sailing, and that is the ones that brought it to other lands. There's the debate of who discovered America, whether it's Columbus, Leif Erikson and the Vikings versus, and there was a Chinese merchant that came in that I can't remember his name right now, that came from the West Coast and was supposed to be before all of them. And it's where, as they came, not only is the commodities of what they needed for keeping their, crew alive on the ship, they would also look for new resources, the silk or whatever the commodity was in that area, so they take it back home and do it as merchants. And these individuals became the leaders of those merchants, whether it's from, as you said, 6,000 years BC from the Polynesians to the commercial trades of the Chinese in the year 5000, all the way, through India in the 1000 BC, all the way even Alexander the Great, as you mentioned, was trading, as the Persian king of Mesopotamia. The whole thing is they conquered lands and took over the rule of those lands for what was there as the resources that would bring to it. Classical example is the Roman Empire. They went from Italy throughout Europe all the way to England, and at the end for England for its materials of tin and lead, which they used in their pipes, and ended up being the demise because the pipes were made out of lead. That way.
Absolutely.
But,
I mean, in fact, I think that where sugarcane becomes like very interesting in history is actually when it moved into Europe, because it blew up. I mean, in fact, I look at like American history and the history of the Americas, we wouldn't have the history that we had there not been sugar. I mean, it pretty much created the New World and the economical structure of the New World. I mean, with like triangle trade and slavery, all of that was all part of, the sugarcane industry.
Right, and look at the cost. The cost of sugar way back, and we're talking in the cost of sugar per pound in 1319, because I'm looking at a document here, AD. That's just after the Middle Ages and just after all the times when Genghis Khan and the Golden Horde with his grandson Batu came in, and, they ruled from the Baltics all the way through China. That's why the Great Wall was built, to keep them out. But the thing is, you pay the tax, pay the due. The thing is that it was trading at $50 a pound back then. That's how rare that commodity is, versus now $2.99 or that a pound,
Yes. I mean, I know. I think I found something very similar, and it said that it was being traded at 2 shillings per pound, which if you converted it we're looking at $100 a kilo in today's prices. So, and that's why they called it the white gold.
Right.
And so, yeah, and it was like salt, made North Africa, and sugar made the New World, and it made Europe. And in fact, I think that, this was the big credit to Columbus's cap. When he wasn't able to find gold, he did find sugarcane. And, that's,
And that area for the audience is the West Indies or the Indies. We're talking Tortuga rather. What do you call it? It starts with a B. I can't even think of it right now. But there's Puerto Rico, there's Cuba, there's the other islands with Barbados. That's it, Barbados. Bahamas, all of those islands down there and island countries that were named by or taken reign over by whatever the land was that claimed it for themselves. And at the same time, during that time, they had a lot of native, like the Carib Indians in Puerto Rico and the Caribbean versus the Incas, the Mayans, and Mesoamerica. Any of these tribal nations, they knew the animals, the bond of animal nature and spirit to those areas, and they had a reverence for their different foods or their different commodities, and they would make different drinks or different juices out of honeys, and also this raw sugar juice, which you're going to explain. And before we leave the history, it's so important that not only during that time, sugar cane was the only thing, as you called it, the white commodity, the white sugar commodity. But after that, in 1813, we're talking from 6000 BC up until 1813, which is over 6,000 years, in France they discovered, using in Russia, France, and Germany, the use of the sugar beet so they could figure a way how to get the sugar out of the beet to make, again, raw sugar. Because in the Middle Ages, when they were making cakes and pastries, especially for weddings, that's what they were using, making those little, like, flower decorations out of the sugar, etc. So to have it at $50 a pound or $100 a kilo, you had to be very wealthy to have those wedding cakes. For your guests.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that was the thing is that I think one of the bonuses of England was that they were able to figure out, hey, you know what? Right now we can only make this available for the elite, but once we hit mass and we get the masses hooked into this, we will now dominate the world.
Correct.
With this.
Correct.
And so... and in fact, for the longest time, the ships, what they would only do is just bring in the raw crop. They would actually ship the actual wreath all the way up to Europe for fear that putting a refinement factory in the Caribbean would, allow some of these secrets to be leaked out. So they would spend all this money just sending the sugar cane up there and then having it refined up in the factory in Europe.
How long? Because some of these voyages, especially back then, we're not talking a cabin cruiser or, or the U.S. Navy elite, ship. What we're talking about is beautiful wooden ships made by hand and by the tools at that time. How long would a cut reed of the sugar last in that condition? Before, as soon as you cut it, you're going to have some type of fermentation, let alone squeezing it and getting the juice out in the fermentation, which we're going to go over, audience. But
once you cut the reed, the good thing is that it does cauterize itself right away. So, there is somewhat like of a seal, and with the wax that's around the actual cane husk and that polycosanol, that wax is a natural preservative.
Right.
So
and I forgot too that in a lot of in the sugarcane industry, they burn the fields, to get the bugs out, to get the rats, et cetera, this way.
Yes.
But they burn the field, so that would also act as a cauterization on those reeds. And it's like in the turns of the century when Jamaica came into its own power versus breaking off from England, or the different nations that were owning it, they lost a lot of the sugarcane industry, and they would bring people from India to work in the cane fields, just as our American cane fields, like in the Clewiston area of Florida, they would bring in Jamaicans to run that because they knew how to handle cane.
True.
Because it's like an acquired art. You have to work in it to get the experience of how to do the cane, because you can grow anything, but it's some of those stalks. I know in the Clewiston area are the original seedlings, the original reeds that it's 2011, but they were planted in the 1920s, late 20s, 1930s. They last for a very long time. The plant does, the actual reed.
Oh, it's absolutely a craft. I mean, growing this. In fact, one of the farms that we pull from, we call her the Queen of Cane because she's, first of all, fifth-generation grower down in San Diego. Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. We're here.
Okay.
We're still on
like
the road.
We're cut off. And her claim to fame is, I grow the straightest stalk with the longest segments. And when we first started in this industry, we're like, okay, we want the sweetest stalk. She's like, no, you want the straightest with the longest segments. And now that we've been doing this for a while, wow, she was amazing that over all of these decades, their family, that was their focus, how to grow the straightest with the longest segments. Because once you have that cane grow straight, you're going to get a lot more plants per acre, and then also once you've harvested it's much easier to juice on the machine, and so she's able to really maintain and expand her clientele for her particular crop. And the segments, the longer the segments are, the more juice you're going to get, and the better of a chew you're going to get, or else you're just chewing like the knot. Because audience, I don't know, I'm going to assume a lot of people have seen sugar cane. I mean, there's several segments. It's like a tree trunk, and
like bamboo. Like bamboo.
Yeah, very similar. And so once you get into that joint, that's virtually non-chewable. I mean, it's about like the texture of birch. So and it's amazing because I mean we've worked a little closely with our Hmong farmers who farm up in Central Valley, and we've had a chance to do some cutting, and it's a lot of hard work. I mean, I came out of there like so tore up. It just had cuts all over my face, my arms, and I was fully wrapped in clothing. And then what they have to go through in the wintertime to ward off the frost and the rain. I mean, they cover their field fully in this, kind of, it's like semi-greenhousing, but they cover it in plastic, and then they have to keep small fires tended throughout the night so that the cane doesn't get too cold. But yet the fires can't catch on fire, so they've got their kids out there sleeping in the fields in the middle of the night to tend the fires.
Right, and those fires, they can be like a small bonfire, or they used to use kerosene lamps, or burners, very much like the citrus industry. And why that is, audience, is because when your temperature goes down below 32 degrees Fahrenheit, the fruit, like in the orange trees, can freeze, and in particular the sap in the sugar canes can freeze. And then once that crystallization occurs as being frozen like an ice, within the plant, it's not good for harvest. It's mush. It's just absolutely not good at all. So it's like a lost crop. And with that, especially with your supplier having the tallest or and also the straightest stalk, it's very important because plants get a lot of virus or the residues because they're basically sucking up the pathogens within the soil that are not endemic to them, and also having less nutrients, meaning if you got the right mineralization, like I'll give you an example. Why does a plant turn yellow when you're watering it? Everybody thinks it's too much water, but in reality it may be that it doesn't have enough chloride, enough iron, so it needs iron chloride to make it nice and green for the chlorophyll. And cane plants, audience, we can imagine in our mind, a green reed as being bamboo, and then it's dried and it can be varnished and shined to be like a very good cane pole to go fishing with. The sugar cane is wider in diameter and more, I'm going to say, coarser than the reed because of what it needs in the inside in making the sugar, meaning the flow of the liquid within it. That's a bad example, but it needs those compartmentations, just like you mentioned at the harder part of the joint where it's hard as birch, even though birch is a soft wood. What Ray is trying to explain to our audience is that it has more cellulose, more a tighter bond of the layer of those cells that are making that cell matrix. It's like a weave within that net of cells. And science has also found that the different types of chlorophyll that you may have in a plant, meaning like chlorophyll A, B, C, meaning you have also the pigments going from the darker greens to the yellows to the oranges to the blues, et cetera this way. Those pigments also play a role with the chlorophyll in that the different combinations can also help in making it stronger. And I would suspect that the straighter the stalks is the less amount of viral load, which is like a crystal, a liquid crystal that can distort the growth of a plant, as it can do with our own body. When we get viruses in our body, especially ones that cause skin tags or warts, we see the effect. We see a wart coming on our skin when the skin was normal in other areas. It's just usually on the nerve, just as, and people forget, a plant, especially sugarcane, bamboo, or even an oak, they're a higher woody plant. Granted, yes, the sugarcane is less woody than an oak tree, but they all have a nervous system. Even our simple plants do. So they have feeling. That's what I'm going to.
Well, actually, when you were talking about that, like that whole, where that joint area is, where it becomes more like compacted cells in the cellular system, I mean, that's kind of like the nerve center for the plant, because each one of these joints is actually where a new set of roots are, created, and that's where the little baby shoots come out, too.
Right, it can regenerate. So that means it has its embryonic cells there that can regenerate, because a plant, usually it comes from a seed, or it's re-rooted, just as you described, or you're like even a basil little stalk or a mint stalk. You can break it off, put it in some water with some nutrients or water by itself, and it can grow its own roots. That is its mechanism of survival, and so that's a very good point that from that root base, because it's the essence of life within that plant, in particular the sugarcane stalk that is coming from that area. And those are prized plants, in certain fields. In like your the supplier that you have in San Diego, their stock may be worth more than other stocks due to its purity and what it was bred to do. That's what I'm.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in fact, with the aggressive growers, such as this particular farm, like when we get our cane, it's completely like the hardest part of the sheath is peeled off, and we thought, she always said, it's to make it easier for your machine, but now we've learned through the years, it's so that she nicks off each of those sprouts, because she does not want another farmer to, be able to profit from 5 generations of research and trial and error in order to propagate that, particular type of cane. So, and a lot of our farmers actually do that. Like, there's no babies that are there. They've nicked off all the sprouts. They'll dig them all out of the joint.
And that's what farmers need to do to protect their intellectual property. Big industry does it with their patents and their IP, even with their trademarks. It is a thing, and she worked 5 generations. That's over 100 years here in California to process that, like our avocado industry and the citrus from the East Coast to the West Coast. It's very precedent. And also, before we leave the stocks and go on to other topics that you and I are going to cover, Ray, as Dr. Daniel comes on, what is very important... Is
he there?
I don't think so, not yet. We're trying to get him, our producer was.
Yeah, I am too, huh? Do you... Okay.
Okay. The thing is that not only when we go into the process of how to make raw sugar juice and what that extraction is, your co-components, too, as what you select in the canes that you produce for your product, are organic.
Yes.
Pesticide-free, etc.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Go ahead.
What I'm saying is they're pesticide-free, they're organic, and as natural as possible under today's conditions with a lot of contaminants in the air, etc.
Yes.
Because I know you stress having, I know there's a noise in the background, you have stressed having organic product and the purity of your finished ingredients that you use in even blending some of your special juices that you have to lose weight.
Yes. I think that that's very important, especially because we do make juices for cleansing, and especially since we deal with this pure grass and it's clean reed, then it is very important that we match it up with other produce that's just as clean and just as with as much integrity, so that the body can actually do what it's intended to do, which is cleanse, and that the juice can actually clean you and not introduce, new pathogens and new toxins that are harmful to us. I mean, it does introduce, like, a series of different probiotics and prebiotics, but that's stuff we want. But, the other stuff, we don't want that, and then we do want the nutrients, and we do want the live enzymes and the live minerals and the vitamins, but none of that other stuff.
Right, and that's an excellent lead-on into, if you could explain, one is raw sugar versus sugar juice versus white sugar. What's the difference from your perspective in manufacturing and, being in the industry as long? And I'll interject some of the health aspects of them and not so good health aspects, okay?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So, what?
Go ahead. From the raw sugars, as everyone in the audience knows, is like the table sugar or any of those, which are the white, and then we have the brown sugars, et cetera. How do they differ in manufacturing, or how, if you know, and how does it differ from what is your finished product, which is raw sugar juice? We can explain how that is made,
sure.
In general terms.
Well, let me first, we'll just start backwards then.
Okay.
We'll start with white refined sugar first, and then we'll work into raw sugar, and then we'll go down into sugarcane juice. And I'm going to leave that last because it's the most primitive of all the three. So refined white sugar is, what happens is they take the juice from the stalk, it's been pressed out, and then the juice is evaporated at a high temperature. Once it's evaporated, you get a syrup. Then the syrup is processed, and there's a centrifugal processing that happens to it, and eventually, through processing and multiple refinements, you get a crystal. And that crystal is somewhat like golden and brown colored, which is, I'm going to assume what you were saying, Dr. Hildy, raw sugar, or that's called like turbino or muscovado, but that's, and some people call it golden sugar. And so at that point, in order to get it white, you have to now go through a bleaching process. So the most common form of bleaching is to run it through animal bone ash, and so which led to certain companies nowadays market their sugars as vegan white sugar because conventional white sugar is not vegan since it's run through animal bones. And so that's how you get white sugar. Now, in the process of doing all that, moving from this basically lightly green, lightly copper-colored juice liquid to a white crystal that's powdered, you have to imagine that, the entire form of the original reed has to be changed. And so the first thing is when you go through evaporation, enzymes die because enzymes are the most sensitive, and they live only when they're embodied in fluid. So those go. So you no longer have your enzymes. Then the second thing is your minerals get very compromised because of the heating. And then, of course, your vitamins are compromised. Oh, and then whatever's left, then you got to bleach it. So in the very, very end, by the time it becomes table sugar, which runs about 85 to 95% sucrose, and that's what we call manufactured sucrose because it's actually refined into that form. That 95% sucrose crystal, to me, is a very, very far-fetched, product compared to the original reed. And it absolutely has nothing to do with the original reed anymore because it doesn't even look anything like it. Because it's gone from liquid to a powder, and it's gone from brown to white, and it's gone from
and it doesn't have the nutritional value. And also, because you mentioned, too, through the many processes, and I used to have clients that were in the sugar industry, from the manufacturing of commercial powdered sugar. The thing is that it's in a standard shape, meaning that all those crystals, if you looked at it with a magnifying glass, there's nothing abnormal about them. They all look the same, and even having the same diameter or texture. And that's part of their processing. Because they take it and they run it through mills, sieves.
Yep. But it's just kind of crazy. While you were describing that, how artificial is that? That each one is like the perfect dimension.
Right, and that's a lot of things that we know that even regular viral crystals from viruses, each one has a different shape, and those shapes can interfere with the water flow of our body and the interaction of the absorption within the cells, because the smaller the molecule, the higher its risk of going into the cell, as we've seen with nano and also the delivery system, for genes and also particles for time-released medications using that technology is a prime example how primitive viruses or how viruses can get shattered and go in. But the nutrients, and that's very important, audience, as compared to what we have in raw sugar juice and raw cane juice, which is supplied by Rey's company, as compared to refined sugars, that they lose a lot of their minerals, their natural vitamins, and in particular the enzymes. And those enzymes are very, very, very beneficial to the body, and they have to be kept, not only the minerals and the enzymes, just as with the vitamins, at a certain temperature, because a lot of these processes they want to homogenize or heat kill so that they're concerned about bacteria. But when you're dealing with a raw product, just as yours is, you have to take into consideration that it is the natural process or the fermentation process, and you capture it before it goes within that 42 to 78 hours, a time lot, whatever that time lot is, before it goes into the major, because 75% can be fermented, and then, you're making sugar wine or something,
Yes, versus moving towards rum eventually.
Yeah. I mean, it was big industry in the islands. And the thing is that you lose these values. And new sciences are looking at the universal area to use what they use, a dragon protein, which is manufactured out at the universities in the north. The thing is that it is also, what is important is, what is the enzymes that not only trigger our DNA, but the RNA that sends the messages and stuff like that. In your product, who knows? None of us or I have done the science in analysis of those types of products, because I do know. I was introduced to Ray's product by a client of mine, Corolla, and I thought that was the most wonderful product that there was in the market at the time, and still is. And let me tell you, audience, that is the best product when you are having any patient or anyone is having diarrhea or fecal incontinence, which can be caused by exposure to nanomaterials, in particular crystal motes. And it is wonderful in clearing that up within 24 hours. So thank you very much, Ray, for a wonderful product that way.
But thank you for discovering us. Yeah,
we all were connected by a dot.
It's like, I think that cuisine and health, we don't have enough to say about grasses in general. I mean, there is so much power in grass. In fact, there was a Swiss study done by this guy, Astromolch, and he said the only food that can take up the entire spectrum of minerals, which there are 90-plus minerals in the soil on Earth, are grasses. These are the only foods that can take up the entire spectrum of minerals. And so grass, as say compared to a fruit or vegetable, has the power. It has so much more capacity for life. I mean, it's just like a vacuum cleaner in absorbing nutrients. And so when you put that into your body, then, the vibrancy that flows into our body from the juice, it's very healing. It very much can re-regulate and help our body regain its natural processes to eliminate and to nourish itself. And so that's why, wheatgrass is so, I mean, people, especially Americans, where we really hate, the bitter taste and, we like things tasting nice. I mean, millions of people go out and get their wheatgrass shot because they see that there's a direct correlation to how that affects their body immediately.
Right, and that brings up to an important point, because a lot of individuals are looking at, is this product alkaline or acid or anything? Because it's a natural squeeze process, and we never really got into how we make raw sugar, meaning the juice, and we'll go into that. But it's because of that process, audience, is what makes it alive, and that is called bioactive. Bioactive meaning that has a life force in it that is giving you that life force so that you can make your own radiant heat and generate your processes, especially with the amounts of chlorophylls that are in it that are needed so much in creating the photons within our system, because you can gain weight, you can do anything, but if you didn't have 15 photons to be generated, one ATP molecule and so many ATP molecules in your mitochondria, you won't burn any fat, you won't have any metabolism, etc. So it may not be what you eat, it may be what you are lacking in what you eat that is very important. Our cells, it was a major discovery in all of these trades, whether it was the Vikings going throughout Europe, coming over to Canada and Nova Scotia, versus the Chinese coming into Mesoamerica, Central America, etc. All of these countries, including Polynesia, New Guinea, every one of them, they had one commodity that they all traded in, and that maintained their health and their minerals at that time, and that was kelp.
Mm-hmm.
So they'd have
yep,
beautiful teeth, etc.
Yep.
But now
that's
the thing is, but that's another seagrass, exactly. That had the minerals not only from the sea, but also from what was on the bottom of the earth, where it would root, or it floats. The thing is, where I'm going with this, audience, is that these raw sugar juice, especially the juices that, the products that are made by Rey Koo and her partner Robby, that they are so pure that they have those minerals, and it's very important. I sell a beautiful product, original ketone, that has the natural minerals in it from the ocean and the algae that it's harvested around when it blooms. But the thing is, you need these because you're not getting them in the plants. In these plants that you might be buying in the grocery store, they're impregnated with new biological pesticides. Who knows what's going to happen? What I'm saying is it's very important, no matter how simple or how expensive something is, you start budgeting and you start putting it into your diet so that you are healthy and you can get over these unique times, because if you don't do it yourself, no one else is going to do it for you.
I mean, in fact, when you were just saying that, it made me think of, now there's so much of our vegetation that's grown hydroponically, and working as we do with grasses, I cannot imagine that anything with a synthetic set of minerals and, essential nutrients can compete with Mother Nature, with like good soil, where grasses is able, like, sugarcane, it grows obviously in soil, and it's able to just pick up like true, pure, good nutrients. And so, I mean, I think that this is another discussion itself, like where
It can
agriculture is going.
And we have a beautiful product that is used. It can be used in hydroponics. It can be used at agriculture. It's wonderful. I've used that product for close to 29 years, going on 30 years now, and it's wonderful in that. But not many people use that product, in hydroponics. And in ourselves, hydroponics, I used to always think they're pure because they're under, the greenhouse and stuff like that. They're not getting the air pollution, etc. But now you have to look at the nutrients it is. So I hope some of our audience that are hydroponicists and specialize in that area take into consideration that way, because the whole thing is, every one of us who have ever had farming in our bloodlines, which we all have had sometime in our life, of this life or other times in our generations, we definitely need to eat all the time. So it's very important, because we're not many of us are brethren where we can breathe the air and live on it, But probably if you were that type, you could live very well, because there's a lot of carbon and other pollution in it, so you might be able to live a little bit longer with that. But in particular, Ray, go ahead, Ray.
Oh, I was going to say, I should talk a little bit about just the nutrients that are in sugarcane juice, right?
Right, and then also, before we go into the nutrients, can you explain the process of making the sugar juice?
Yes, of course. Okay, so the stalk is harvested, it's hand-cut, and then it's peeled often. And then at that point, we just press it through a triple roller press. It's that simple, primitive. And
that press that you use.
Imagine, pardon?
The press that you use, and excuse me for interrupting you, Ray, but the press you use is basically the standard press that may have been used 100 years ago. It just might have a new metal meaning.
Well, in India, it's still used in old traditional ways, which is it's completely manual, and they often use like a mule or even people to churn it. And so the press, and lots of people probably haven't seen this, but it looks very similar to like the double roller press that you use.
Right, like an old washing machine roller.
Yes.
An old washing machine roller.
That's right, exactly. So what it's doing is, of course, it's doing a cold, slow smashing of that stalk, and out comes the water. And that juice that comes out is actually about 85% water, and then it's got the other 15% of it, which is nutrient, the density of the nutrients. So when you compare, say, the sugar level of the cane juice when we press it out of the stalk, that's at about 11% naturally occurring sucrose. And then, again, when I was discussing, say, just evaporated cane juice, which is the most natural of the crystalline sugars, that one is at 95%. So there you can see what happens when you evaporate and refine. I mean, you are changing the glycemic index, the sugar component completely. White sugar or even evaporated cane juice crystals, that is not a low glycemic food. There is no nutrition or any density in that. It's just flavor. So what happens is your body, it accepts it and it delights in the flavor, but then since it has no nutritional value, it really doesn't know what it is, so it just kind of deposits it.
Right, it compartmentizes and stores it within the body.
Yeah, it stores it because
it
keeps thinking one day I'm going to be able to extract either enzymes, fats, minerals, or vitamins from this.
Right, and that goes back to our...
I'm going to somehow convert this.
Right, it goes back to our survival gene. We will not ever be hungry again, We have to save, compartmentize, because we never know when we're going to run or have to make do with what we have. And that is just the nature of us human beings, as with many animals and other life forms on this planet. It's with us. Now, with that, compared to your juice, which I know yours is very bioactive, and honestly, audience, as soon as you taste something that is bioactive, you feel it, especially if you are, your own body and that, you can feel it come in and be accepted or commune with your body, that product.
Yes. Yeah, you definitely feel the vibrancy of this, and unlike white sugar, there is no crash, so it's pure food, and it's just energizing you. With the cane juice, when it's a whole food, as that's what we bottle, without any form of, with minimal processing. We just smash it. But then you're doing that with your own teeth, if you wanted it as a pure whole food. So at that point, the level of minerals it has in fact all the 5 primary alkaline minerals that our body needs. It has iron, it has magnesium, it has potassium. In fact, it has just about 5% shy of the amount of potassium that's in coconut water. So it's just full of electrolytes. Yeah. We just got that study in. It has manganese, which I believe there's only a small handful of edible foods that have manganese in them. So this is one. Seaweed also has manganese. It has calcium. And so these are the essential 5 alkaline minerals that many people say are the most useful in cancer prevention. And so that's why in certain parts of the world, like in Okinawa, they've done some deep studies about sugarcane, and they've looked at, we all know that Okinawans happen to have like the largest percentage of centurions in the world, and so they broke it down to diet. And one thing that made Okinawans very different from the rest of the Japanese is that they had a few different crops that other parts of Japan didn't have access to and did not use on a daily basis, and one of them was sugarcane. And so they realized that, not only are they having all the vibrancy of seaweed, but they're also having land grasses on a regular basis, and that was why that was one of the research projects to, trying to figure out, like, why was it that Okinawans were not only centurions but also did not have such sensitivity to being, to being victimized by cancer.
Right, especially that cancer, as our audience knows, it affects all of us, and we're always fighting it within ourselves. And the thing is, because we've had some loved one or someone that we know pass away due to a form of cancer, it's very devastating to the body, because it's basically the body shutting down due to the process of what's occurring. And it's very dramatic to the individual that has it, and also the family and the survivors around them. But at the same time, and it goes back to what you said earlier, and I said, Ray, what the Okinawans have, they had this diet of grasses and the sugars, but they were high in the minerals and the nutrients and the enzymes that are needed to protect the body. And when you have that, many people, if you cut off your iron, you don't have a good production of your red blood cells, and you end up having not the absorption of oxygen, etc. So there's many things that can go wrong within the body, but when you have it healthy, you may not get sick. People around you may get sick or have a symptom. So it's where just cleansing and getting to the body to be healthy that way.
Well, I think also it's very important, since we're talking about cells. I mean, cancer is when the cell goes into malfunction. And so what we want to always do is, and, it was so interesting. I mean, when I first went to an acupuncturist, and I said, I have this illness and this illness and this illness. And I said, and my mother's prone to this cancer and this cancer, and I'm a nervous wreck. And he said, everybody has cancer in them. Because that's just that's a fact of life. He goes, here's the thing. The only thing we can do is fortify your healthy cells so that they fight off the abnormal cells.
And that's an excellent point. It's exactly 100% right.
Yeah, and so this whole idea of maintaining a healthy cell life, like cell renewal, and, making sure that your dead cells are, being passed on, that's extremely important when you're thinking about your diet. So, and that's why I think, there's so much marketing on antioxidants, because you want to push off the dead cell, push off the abnormal cells, and give those healthy cells that chance to really dominate. And so that's where also, with your grass juices, like cane juice, it's very, very rich in B2, riboflavin. And riboflavin is one of the most important parts of creating that metabolic energy that's used to maintain that healthy cell life. Cells are energized from that metabolic reaction constantly. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
No, and that's true. That's true, as we're waiting for Dr. Daniel to come on. And an audience, we're going, in about 5 minutes, we're going to have our little break in between, and Ray will still be with us for our second half, and hopefully Dr. Daniel will be here for our second half with some of the treatment.
Him.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe you can do that on the break.
He just popped his head in, and then I don't know what happened to him. He said,
it's okay. They're trying to get him. They're trying to get him.
Okay.
And that. But it's very important what you just brought out about the metabolic energies. I know the local universities here in the Los Angeles area are getting a lot of grant monies in looking at metabolic issues. Example, what they call projectile vomiting, metabolic disorders. But in my case, meaning in my field of toxicology, I've seen projectile vomiting, et cetera, as when the sulfur is being removed from the liver, trying to neutralize with the glutathione the toxin coming in, which is usually weed killer or any of these other pesticides that has been not overindulged by that person, that they're so low in these reserves that they whatever it takes out of their cells to neutralize it is devastating to them. But we see that they can be genetic markers that way. At the same time, it goes back to those genetic markers, maybe even false markers, because it could be as simple as not having enough B2, riboflavin, which you could get from raw sugar juice, and have it naturally absorbed. And what is so nice about the raw sugar juice is that it can absorb almost 100% effectively within the GI tract, where the largest portion of our nervous system is within that whole area.
Yes.
And audience, we have our music in our background, so we're going to be taking a little break, and then we'll join our second half. And Ray, if you would stay on the line with us, and we'll try to get Dr. Daniel, okay?
Do you guys have his phone number? Is that what you're trying to call him on?
Yeah, don't say it over the phone, but if you can, are you by your computer or that? You can email it to Shoshana?
Let me try to use another phone to try to reach him. We're on a break, right?
Yeah, you're on the break. Go ahead, and then you go ahead, and then you can call back in.
Okay, I'm gonna call him right now, and then I'll keep you guys on this line. You know what?
Okay, and audience, I want to tell you that please look at our website, One Cell One Light, and look at each one of the shows. Since the time of Computer Puppets to the present, there is lots of prizes that have been sponsored by Integrative Health Systems with the show for their Bocce Me, their Chocmo lines. And so far we've only had 2 winners of the purses, which were on the Country Hen Show and the AgriGrow, the Miracles of AgriGrow, or Agriculture, which was the hen purse and all the grandma soap goodies inside of it. And those winners were Linda Porunski and then also Karen Malecki. And who knows who the winner will be on this show, which is the question for this show is what is the name of the merchant that was the most successful in merchant of sugar? Not the ones that created it, but the one who was the most successful in merchandising it. Okay? We'll see you on the second half of the show.
Informed, enlightened, alive and amplified. This is the Living Light Network.
Good afternoon, audience. We're back for our second half. This is Dr. Hildy, and I have my guest, Miss Rey Koo, and also Dr. Daniel Hutchinson on our topic, raw sugar juice and its diversity. And thank you, Dr. Hutchinson, for joining us. We missed you on the first half.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be on.
Oh, it's going to be great. Are you there, Ray?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. When we broke, we were just ending where we were discussing, Dr. Hutchinson, in reference to how bioactive juices, example like the raw sugar juice, is wonderful for metabolic processes and absorption of vitamins, in particular like with vitamin B2 with riboflavin. And I know you've used this because you've come from a strong background in, you are an acupuncturist and also traditional Chinese medicine, but looking at the holistic and at the same time of the more herbal and plant remedies that you have implemented within your practice. I know you love to use this juice, and you use it in your process, practice. In particular, audience, there are 3 main flavors which we have for the raw sugar juice, which is the sour, which is an alkalizing tonic. We have a sweet, which is the plain cane sugar, and a spicy, which is a pungent and hot. It's a detoxifier elixir. And Dr. Hutchinson is going to explain some of these processes of these different types and how it's so relative to maintaining your health with it. And so let's begin, Dr. Hutchinson, okay?
Yes. So the scope of traditional Chinese medicine It's almost like an umbrella, and underneath that umbrella, there are many different modalities, techniques, as well as practices that are used underneath this umbrella of traditional Chinese medicine. The popular part of Chinese medicine is acupuncture, and then follows the herbs, and then as you get more into it, you learn that there's also traditional massage techniques, as well as something called moxa brushing, which uses an herb called mugwort, and is burned near the surface of the skin, not on the surface of the skin. Another element of Chinese medicine is called the 5-element theory, and this is where we get the 5 different tastes that we will be speaking about, or the 5 different flavors. So in order not to go into too deep of a subject, which we don't have that much time for, the 3 flavors that we'll be speaking about are the sweet flavor. The sweet flavor does correspond with the spleen and stomach system. Then we have the sour flavor, which corresponds to the liver and the gallbladder system. And then we have the pungent, spicy flavor, which corresponds with the lung and large intestine system. We'll start with the spleen and the sweet flavor. So when we intake the sweet flavor from the sugarcane juice, what we are doing are actually tonifying our body. Now, a lot of us hear the term tonic or herbal tonic, chi tonic, blood tonic, and this is often misunderstood. If we look at the word tonic, we can break it down to tonify or tone. Now, if our organs aren't in the right tone, then they don't have the right shape. They're out of shape. They might not be operating properly. So the tonifying herbs, or the sweet flavors, are used to put our organs back in the right position. Now, that might be a prolapse condition where the organ is sinking, and the tonification is done to put it back in the proper place in the body. That may be, some would say, like a flabbiness or a loss of shape, and that's when you use something that's sweet. Now, this doesn't correlate to sugar and calories and things like that. This is a system that was based on theories that were developed pre-industrial revolution. So in modern times, we could organize it and explain how the calories relate to the sweet flavor, but for the sake of this discussion, it's a TCM theory that the sweetness in whatever the food or the herb is will help to tonify the body.
And that's very important with the tones, for the toning of the body, as you just explained,
right,
from the shapes. Go ahead, Doctor.
If you look a little bit deeper beyond the organs and look into the blood vessels also need proper tone. Without the proper tone, the blood doesn't flow properly, and many problems can occur, such as bleeding or bruising or various blood disorders based on that. And it's interesting to see that in the Eastern medicine, the spleen does correspond with the immune system, but not in the same way that it's spoken about. In Western medicine, we look to the spleen for T cells, which do correlate to the immune system, but not in the same way that it's looked at.
Mm-hmm.
So with the function of the sweet flavor, we look at it as a flavor that's added to almost every single Chinese medicine formula. And the reason the sweet flavor is added into these formulas, almost every single one, is because it helps to balance the actions of the bitter herbs, the sour herbs, the pungent herbs, and pretty much like the flavors that are hard to stomach.
Right, the more bitter, etc. When they're the more pungent and where we don't like them, sometimes they're very good for us in what they're needed for the health. Right.
And to prevent a reaction in the body that may be too, let's say you just drank a straight glass of dandelion juice. Now that's a little harsh for some people, so the sweet flavor does smooth it out without eliminating the action and function.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great carrier in many ways, and within the context of the traditional Chinese medicine theory, the carrier is the sweet flavor, and this relates to the spleen, which the spleen is performing a function. the function that the spleen performs is to transform the fluids that are taken into the body as well as the grains and foods, and to transform these foods into what will eventually create the blood. So if we look at it from a traditional standpoint, the spleen is the origin of all the chi, all the energy, and all the blood in the body. Now, this is not an isolated organ, so they are all connected, but just for the sake of speaking about it in specific, that's what the spleen function is. And interestingly enough, when the spleen is in proper function, each person is able to interpret and distinguish the 5 separate tastes. When the spleen is not in proper condition, it's hard to taste certain things. You may find that with people taking certain antibiotics or pharmaceuticals, sometimes they can lose their sense of taste.
Right, and also not only from that, but also from chemical exposures, certain pesticides and other compounds can interfere with that. And also, that may also explain when you're usually in science classes in 7th grade or 8th grade, you always have this litmus paper test to see if you can taste the bitterness on the paper versus some people genetically cannot taste it. And it may be as a result of some interaction within the spleen, in particular with its mitochondria and its gene pool in those areas versus the whole body. I think time and science will tell in the future, as with medicine, Dr. Daniel. But this is excellent in what you're doing. And I missed it at the beginning of the show because I was taking some notes here where you mentioned the sweet flavors for the spleen and the stomach. The spicy is the lung and the large intestine. But what organs, again, were for the sour?
The sour will correspond to the liver and the gallbladder.
And with all what's happening, I do not know if it's happening within your practice, but over on my practice over here, we have seen a lot of crystallized gallbladders and malfunctioning gallbladder, which may come from, in many of our foods we've got modified food starch, which is polyurethane, styrene, like styrofoam cups in it, half and half. But that's to be determined. But the whole thing is, when you have 3 or more people that's coming into your office with this same complaint, as with nosebleeds or anything, something's going on because you usually don't. You're lucky if you get 1 or 2 in your career sometimes.
Wow.
In that way. But the gallbladder flushes, and with the use of the raw sugar juice, meaning for the sour side, that would be very effective, wouldn't it, in cleaning out the gallbladder?
Yeah, well, we can go into it like this. We can call the liver a yin organ, and we can call the gallbladder a yang organ. The yang organs they'll be more like containers, whereas the yin organs have a function. So it's not to say that gallbladder doesn't have a function. It does have a function. Yet its action in this unit, in this pairing, is more of a yang. It's more of it's containing the bile, as well as releasing it at the right time. So a lot of times when we're cleansing, or we might have had a diet consisting of trans fatty acids and whatever else that's getting into our food, and that'll clog the ducts. A lot of people develop gallstones, and sometimes it's undetected until they're so large that they have to be surgically removed. So people do benefit greatly from this, whether it's clarity of their mind or a little easygoing attitude, less frustration, less stress. But it's not always easy to determine that that's the cause. When used for the sour flavor, it has an astringent quality. If you notice, astringent as in like closing the pores, perhaps stopping the sweat, tightening the skin. But the astringent quality also will have that effect on the organs internally. So in some ways it could stimulate the function of the liver, to stimulate the function of the gallbladder as well. And in this case, when it's put into a formula with the sugarcane juice, you see that it does help people with their cyclical issues, whether it's a menstrual cycle
Mm-hmm.
or the hormonal cycles.
Right. Balancing
And,
the hormones and the menstrual cycle. Probably reduces also any type of clotting that may occur, too, because of the absorption of the minerals. Or I'm using minerals, but meaning the nutrients, I should say.
Yes, there's been research done that says the lemon, or I don't know what it is about the lemon, whether it's acid or purely just the energetic quality of the flavor and the colors, but they say it helps to digest grasses and the chlorophyll and things like that. So I find it to be a really good combination to use.
Meaning from the detoxifier, the spicy one?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and the or the alkalizer in itself.
Yeah, because the audience doesn't realize. Let's just go back a little bit, Dr. Dan. The detoxifier elixir that Dr. Daniel is speaking about is it's because it uses not only the raw sugar juice, but it also uses lemon juice, cayenne, and other ingredients that are put in it for cleansing the liver and those organs. It works wonderful. And lemon has so much bioflavonoids in it, and the oils, especially if they're using in the process the actual lemon versus a concentrate, which I know Ray and her partner Robby use, as much natural as possible, as always, and it would give so much benefit that way. I know I've tasted each one of these products and used them, and I love all of them, but my favorite is that lemon one because I like it a little spicy and tart, but it's really good.
Very often in Chinese medicine, we'll use the peel of the lemon or the lime, and this actually helps to move the energy, move the qi. And being that this is we're speaking in the framework of the Chinese medicine when it comes to these flavors. So it helps to move the qi, it helps to break up accumulations, like you said, as well. So it's very helpful, and it's something that, people are very fond of lemonade, lemon juice, whether it's on their salads or as a fruit salad, things like that, and or in their tea. So it's something that people get into their diet every day. Learning the functions of it will help people really decide what's the best choice right now. And the function of the sour in relation to the liver's function from the Chinese medicine perspective is to store the blood. So first we started speaking on the sweet flavor, which is tonifying, and the spleen, which is producing qi and the blood. The liver here's function is to store the blood and then to send it out into the different directions, most likely the four limbs, but also to the head and the eyes. The liver has a direct connection with the eyes in Chinese medicine, and very often we can determine the quality or the level of function of the liver by looking at the eyes. So red eyes would show there's heat in the liver. Blurry vision would show that the liver's blood was a little deficient. Various conclusions can be drawn from that.
Right, because I know ocular observation, like you just said with the red eyes, is very important when you're observing this, from a Chinese medicine standpoint. Even sometimes the sclera, which is the white of the eye, audience, it will swell up at the bottom portions near the lower lid, and it can distort your vision, but sometimes the majority of that is caused by overproduction with the adrenal glands. And as Dr. Daniel Hutchinson has just told us, that in his, not only his practice, but in the rules of Oriental medicine, Chinese Oriental medicine, the yin and the yang, it's very important in balancing these organs and this whole area. But what is so nice about this particular product is that you have 3 flavors that match 3 of the 5 tastes that use in the regulation of these organ systems and the toning of them. So it's very, to me, very beneficial when you have, in these times, economic budgets, that you can easily incorporate a product like this that is alive and natural into your diet, and also for your children to use in their diet to help them in maintaining their body. And Dr. Hutchinson, from I think we just lost him, and I do not know where Ray went. But
I'm right here.
Okay, Ray.
I'm right here. I was waiting for him to speak, so I didn't speak. But I think maybe we lost him for a second.
Yeah, it's okay. And I think, too, we had a little bad connection because there was a lot of static on the line.
There was a lot of static. And, oh, boy, I'm going to move out of the static area again. But it looks like my...
Are you there, Dr. Daniel? Hello? I'm sorry, audience. But in summary, so I'll cover until we get him back on, and then we'll move forward. What is very important is that the sour, the alkaline tonic side of the raw sugar juice is very good in balancing the liver and the gallbladder. And this is really good because I use in my practice a gallbladder cleanse, which is a half a cup of olive oil and the juice of 3 lemons, fresh lemons, and ask the individual to drink it between 6 and 10 o'clock at night, so that you can drink it all at once if you can tolerate it, or drink it during that time. But this is another alternative to that can regulate the gallbladder and the liver, which is so beneficial because the liver is processing a lot of our waste within our body, and then it defines it to go to solid waste through our GI, the small intestine size, versus on the kidney size. Are you there, Dr. Daniel?
Oh, yes, I'm here.
Okay, good. I was just briefly filling in with you while you got back, and thank you for dialing back. Anyone get lost on the show, we dial back. But now you have a very good connection because we've had a lot of static, which we don't know where it's coming from. But anyway, I can hear you very well, and I know our audience can. When you left, we were talking about, we went through the carrier. You were telling about the pores getting tighter by using the sour with the liver and the gallbladder. For the liver and the gallbladder, I mean the sour-tasting sugar juice, or the sour flavor. And the pores, many people think right away as a toner, or as an astringent, being the pores of our outside of our skin, because we see it all the time. But there are pores in your organs, and in toning them, they're very important too. Wouldn't you think so?
Yeah,
Dr.
I definitely think so. I think it's part of the tonification process, as well as exercising our organs to their fullest capability.
Right, and through those exercise, when you have good metabolism, which is healthy metabolism, because there's basically 25 different processes within the body that uses metabolism in different areas: carbohydrates, sugars, metabolic disorders that control your vomiting reflex, or any of these processes, endocrine, etc. The thing is that once that regulation is going on properly, it allows for a more better function of that organ, because it's not working in, as I call it, in high gear all the time, trying to make the process work, versus it's doing it at a constant motion and also at a regular time or regular flow, versus to the extreme of its flow and situation.
Yes, and very energy efficient as well.
Right, very energy. And because this material, as probably with other materials that you've worked with in your, or herbs or anything that you've worked with in your practice, the more bioavailable it is, the more it's alive, the better it is in the absorption for the body and the benefit to the body, as we see in the cell life of regeneration or anything along that line. Would you concur or concur? Or?
Oh, yes. I mean, the enzymatic activity of the body extends far beyond the digestion. So we definitely need bioavailable nutrients and the enzymes, to whether it's for neurotransmitters or for the glandular release. And A lot of functions depend on this.
And so many people don't realize, I always say, like, we have 350 glands on our face alone, but those glands, as with our lymphatic system, have a small neural system within it that is pumped as we do some cardiovascular exercise or even massage our head. We increase circulation that also pumps this lymphatic system, as you can do in like rebounding or any of these other types of exercise or beneficial activities for, moving the congestion within the lymph. So many times in those lymph glands you have congestion. The congestion is that there's not a flow of circulation into it, so whatever is absorbed in those sponges of the lymphatic system, the toxins, they're stuck there. And the longer that area is impacted with this material, the more risk of disease that you have. And with the the spicy elixirs that's there, so many people now, I don't know if you've noticed it in your practice, Dr. Daniel, but are experiencing chemically induced asthma attacks, respiratory cough, prolonged cough, etc., where you didn't have that about 5 years ago or so. So that means there's more pollution in the air or some other factor that's playing a part of it. But for our audience, a lot of this is due to the natural response of the respiratory system is to make a glycoprotein, which is a sugar protein. Not meaning that it comes from our sugar. It's our natural response with our body through carbohydrate metabolism to encapsulate whatever is making it sick or not making it proper functionally so that it can function properly. And with the right detoxification, as with these products from raw sugar juice, it allows for those glycoproteins, which are basically encapsulating, could even encapsulate alveoli or that, making like plugs to detoxify that area, and you can breathe deeper. Have you seen that with the use of that product like I have?
Interesting you say that. We don't always target the product in that fashion, but people do come back to us and tell us about the results and how they're feeling. So it does help people for issues that they may not even intended for it. They might be detoxing or trying to lose weight, but they find that they can breathe better. They're not congested in the sinuses anymore.
And the sinuses, even though we know that, our nasal passages absorb the air and the pollution in that area, many people forget that the bridge of our nose is where there's a main blood vessel area, and in that area is where the ionophils from our immune system are one of our white blood cells, which specifically make specific sensors to go after certain chemicals that we may become allergic to or to identify what it is. They have the code of who that chemical is or that substance is. And in many times, those get unblocked because as you clean the other areas or the congestion that can be in the liver or the back up to the intestinal colon, etc., these are cleaned out, the rest of the area of the body will detoxify itself and be able to drain these toxins out in a more natural ability, where before, with all the congestion in it, it couldn't move. It was stuck. And
this leads into the spicy flavor, if I can speak on it a little bit.
Sure, please do.
The spicy flavor corresponds with the lung and large intestine. And as it does this, we should understand that the lungs, in this context, rule the chi. So I guess if you can look at it in the Western fashion for one moment, when you inhale, you breathe in this air and oxygenates the blood. And at this point, the blood now has to circulate through the body. So this is the function of the lung in Chinese medicine as well. But you have to add some more things like the dispersion or dissemination of the vapor or the water within the body. So this also plays a key role in the kidney water metabolism. And by stimulating the lung or having the lung acting properly, then our skin is moist and our pores can open and close properly, so we don't overheat and we don't do the opposite. And then also the lung corresponds with the nose, as you were just speaking about the nose. So there's many correlations that we have when we look into this, because the spleen and the lungs work together to create a certain energy in the body called the Wei Qi, which is the immune system. And then you have the liver and the lung, that very often when those two organs are out of order, you see a lot of asthma-related symptoms like shortness of breath, coughing, wheezing. So, I mean, generally looking at all of these flavors and how they're used, and especially what they're derived from, we're able to benefit very greatly the whole organ system in the body.
Right, and you brought up a very good point with the balance of the water within the kidney by the flavor, meaning the spicy flavor. The thing is that you brought up the point of where you can overheat or not have enough heat. Based on what's the I'm going to call it the kidney function, what's going on with the kidney. The thing is, so many people, there is a lot of people out there that don't sweat, or they may perspire greatly when they're eating a hot meal. These are imbalances that can easily be attributed to possibly the amount of water absorption or retainment within the kidney. Would you think that?
Like an edema.
Yes, like an edema. And see, people from the kidney, as you know, as a doctor of Oriental medicine and acupuncture, that it has many nephrons in it, meaning which are filters, and pollution or the protein buildup from trying to neutralize different pollutions can be built up within certain, I'm going to call it not lobes, but certain areas of the kidney through that nephron filtration. It's just finer filters. And the thing is that in this process, the kidney, as it gets clogged in one area, may cause another function to not work properly, as in perspiration, because it is losing cholinesterase in one area that has to balance by robbing it from another area, which is another function back to what you were saying with the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
You got a lot of background noise there. I don't know.
I don't know if it's over here.
No, I don't think it's over there. I think it's over at Ray's. Are you there, Ray?
Yes.
Okay. From
I was just trying to find a quiet place. They're cutting coconuts open in the shop. So
yeah. I understand. We understand, and thank you. And what was also brought out that Ray brought out on the first half, Dr. Daniel, was in reference to the raw sugar juice having manganese and potassium and other minerals that are so important. I know from my research is so important in the binding of the 6 different forms of superoxide dismutase to assist the body in neutralizing toxins that come into the body. But from your practice and expertise, have you found that particular raw sugar juice to having a lot of minerals and a lot of nutrients that not necessarily are found in a lot of other sources?
Yeah, I do actually. I do. I find it to be a very rich source of minerals that, in the combination that they're found in the sugar cane, to me it relates closest to something from the sea, like in the ocean, that's dwelling in a rich solution.
I agree. That's a beautiful way to put it. It's like the land grass that is from the sea. It is beautiful. Like we've seen, all of us have great respect for the sea vegetables, in particular kelp, and how it was used in trade and benefited all traders, etc. And at the same time, this is a wonderful product, and it is so healthy having the raw cane juice, even if you got a piece of cane and sucked on the shoot, it would be good for you. The thing is, I love it because not only as an adult, and my practice is mainly adult, but once in a while we get children, they love it. You know, doing it for their food or a little snack or a little treat. When you can make something that is medicinal, botanical, that will help heal the body and give it nutrients for a child, it's so much more beneficial in the practice because they enjoy it and they get it and then they take it and there's no fights with mom in taking their vitamins or anything, you know.
And if I could say something really quickly, I mean, one thing we didn't touch on was that cane juice, it's amino acids. And with brain development, especially in infants, that's one of the main components that's necessary. So we do have a lot of raw babies that use our product, and their parents encourage it primarily because of that, for the protein structures.
Oh, and that's very important because so many things now are deficient in amino acids, so you cannot make your proteins and have good muscle development, spinal cord, and also brain function. That is a very good point, very excellent. And also it would be, I would think, highly beneficial to any pregnant mother. And also father-to-be before conception, if he was on a detox side, it would be very beneficial to both parties because it is so. There's so many things being added to so many foods that we even think are organic or just natural that it's so good to know that you have a good product that is supported not only because it's a product that is beneficial to mankind, but a product that is guarded by the founders and owners of that company so that it is the highest quality and the best that they have to offer in that field of raw sugar juice.
Yes. It's safe to say it's the premier product because it's very exclusive, and it's for me, I use it as a primary carrier for any herbs that I'm going to administer to people. Many times people will not, or have a little aversion towards creating a herbal tea. And in that case, I make a drink using the cane juice as the carrier of the herbs, and that way it's very easily administered, and there's no side effects or anything. I mean, it's pretty much. And
that's wonderful because there was just an article yesterday that I read in Science News that they were looking at small molecules, which would be like your herbal molecules, going with a larger molecule, the sugar, in the raw sugar juice, and the other minerals, or, the other molecules that are in it, because it's a blend of molecules. It makes it more bioactive so that it could absorb into the body, into the cell structure faster. So having that carrier benefit is so beneficial, and that's like a subspecialty within your field because
I just actually read an article about warding off radioactive materials. And one of the things that the nutritionist had suggested was to eat very low on the food chain, and grass being the lowest of the food chains, that has the most dense in cellular structures to carry these antioxidants that can ward off the radioactive materials.
It sounds wonderful to me. I mean, that would be a wonderful avenue for it because all of us are exposed to radiation, and also in many people that go through traditional medicine for radioactive therapy, in radiation therapy, in cancers or anything, this product, the raw sugar juice, would be an ideal add-on to their therapy and their treatment because it would give them benefits of what they need in the nutrition as they go, because radiation treatment can be very hard on the body, just as chemo and other types of things, because it's not only killing the bad cells, but killing the good cells. And it's like Dr. Daniel said in the very beginning, it's fortifying the good cells so that, and as you said, Ray, too, in the beginning, of quoting it, as fortifying the good cells so that you can fight against any of these, the prospects of disease. Doesn't necessarily you have to invite them into the home, which is your temple of your body. So the cleaner your body is, audience, the better you can feel the energies within it and know what's good for your body as and also the benefits. And as I would say to anyone, if it's working and making you look good and feel good, you definitely know it's working because you're getting younger in that process. If it's not working and you're still having symptoms and disease, you need to change something. Because when it's working right, you look good, you feel good, and you have not just energy, but you have the drive back. And that's what's so needed in so many things that are going on. And I love what – go ahead.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Just to add to that, we have had several customers who've gone through chemotherapy, and they choose the detox elixir as their 40-day fast right after their sessions. And we have found that they have received like ridiculous amounts of weight loss. And we thought, wow, there was one woman who had reported within the first week she had lost 14 pounds. And we thought, this is impossible because weight loss is only a side effect to the detox elixir, and why was this? And as she went further and researched it and went to an acupuncturist, she realized that most of the weight loss was actually coming off of her lymphatic system, which that's where the chemotherapy and the radiology, that's what most taxes in regards to their toxins. So her toxicity load was so heavy that it weighed 14 pounds within that first 7 days.
Wow.
And it was amazing. And where we saw the weight loss was right around her neckline, right under her arms, and in the backs of her thighs. And that's where there's a lot of lymphatic drainage area.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
So that's very good because that audience is another alternative using the detoxifying elixir so that you can cleanse your lymphatics so that it can help reduce the body burden of the impurities that are in it so that it can go. And also because it has good nutrients in it, the raw sugar juice does, that it would also, I could not see why it would not help repair any of the myelin sheaths or anything that could be damaged from toxic buildup. And many people don't realize that there's also 23 compounds that form from the cell that are highly toxic after exposure to even a piece of wood, let alone a chemical or a substance. And also, if you were ill as a child, especially our generation, where we used a lot of penicillin or a lot of antibiotics, for earaches, etc., before we knew all alternative medicine or oriental medicine or anything like that as we grew older, that body burden can still be in your body. I've tested individuals where they haven't taken tetracycline as an antibiotic for over 20 years, and we still find residues in their body, clinically, analytically.
Mm-hmm.
So it does accumulate, and I personally feel that the more accumulation you have of these toxins, or I should say body burden toxins, that if they're not cleaned out or done like a spring cleaning, you are more prone to the congestion within that organ or the non-tone, as you discussed, Dr. Daniel, like with the spleen, et cetera, being the energy source, and the other areas for the source of chi, so that you have a good energy flow within the system. It's very important, audience, that you heed these words and try raw sugar juice. And if you don't have access to it, because I know our show goes worldwide, that look in your local market or your ethnic markets and see if you can at least get some sugar cane and suck on some sugar cane. And you can always contact Ray at rawsugarjuice.com, and they can.
It's actually sugarcanejuice.org.
Sugarcanejuice.com, and they can. .org, excuse me. They can mail it anywhere in the world, right, Dr. Daniel?
Yes.
Yes, and if you don't have access to sugarcane, I mean, just consider this. Consider adding more grasses to your diet. Whether it's algae or kelp or wheatgrass or alfalfa, non-GMO'd alfalfa. I mean, there's so much to unlock still in the world of grasses. I mean, National Geographic just aired this thing where they said after a forest fire, what's the first thing that grows?
Grass. Yeah.
And this is the microfiber. It's the essential fiber of life. It is the strongest portion of, nature. And so if you incorporate more of the strengthening foods, such as grasses, you are restitching. Basically, you're restitching your cellular structure.
Yes, and that's very important. We learned that with edible flowers with the cataplasma in it, and possibly the grasses have a lot of it, just like you said, of restitching and repairing your muscles, repairing your organs, and giving those tones, because let's put it this way, we don't eat the same foods that our grandparents ate, that didn't have the preservatives or anything in it. And the only ones that are maintaining to a culture of foods or where they have good backgrounds is the ones, the families that are keeping in their cultural roots of their bioethnicity of what they ate in their dishes, whether it's on different seasons or anything like that. I mean, in the rural South, meaning blacks communities, they had a lot of mustard greens, a lot of green vegetables, okras, et cetera, this way, because that was at the time what they could afford, and different meats and porks and that for flavoring. But that has the highest amount of niacin, the highest in guarding the intestinal colon, etc. So sometimes out of a need, you do something that is beneficial for the body and make you more resistant to disease, or I should say the seedlings of what it may be, which is chemicals, and the wild card being the viruses and any of this new stuff that's in the biological side, which is a whole other area, and other shows to come. But with this, I have seen, and you brought out, meaning new mothers taking it. Do they take for the new mothers or for the babies, they take I assume, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, they would do the sweet or the sour?
It depends on their taste buds. Some mothers have found that when they take the ginger lime cane or the detox elixir, the one that you like, that it actually, some of the trace ginger comes through their breast milk, and their babies enjoy that.
Oh, so, and see, ginger, Dr. Daniel, that's very good in cleansing the blood, isn't it? Some Oriental medicine?
Well, from traditional Chinese, it's best for clearing phlegm from the lungs, as well as helping harmonize the stomach, so enhancing the digestion, and the lymphatic gland, as well as the pungent, energetic of a pungent herb is to disperse and disseminate, so it helps to move the lymph along.
Right, so that'll be very good that way. And also it probably reduce mothers' chance, especially if they're nursing, where you can get, the mammary glands can get infected or impacted due to nursing and that. So this would be very, very beneficial that way. Also, from the sweet or any of these three flavors, after they've been on some regimen of either one of these products or this category of sweet, sour, and spicy, pungent, as you stated earlier, I believe, Dr. Daniel, their taste and their smells and that regain better, don't they, if they had lost them?
Yes, what's interesting is that each organ that we touched on, spleen, liver, and lung, for the spleen, the taste buds would open up. For the liver, when in a good condition, then the colors, the ability to see would brighten. And for the lung, the ability to smell.
Right.
So our senses are actually enhanced when our organs are in the proper position.
Right. And audience, just rule of thumb, many children, when they're growing up, they get a pain on the right side, and many physicians will say, oh, it's growing pains, etc. But it can be from exercise, and they're really metabolizing the toxins that are in the liver, because the liver's on the right side of the body versus the left side being the spleen and the small intestine, or higher up, on the lungs. So just use your child or your own anatomy of feeling your organs as you're getting them toned up, because as you get them cleaner and you remove this congestion, you will feel your organs. You will know what's going on within your own body. And I feel that's very important, because it's time for physician heal thyself, So you can
cheers to that.
Yeah, you can take your own life into your own hands. You can say, hey, I'm going to have this disease and be this, that, or just fight it. It's the answers are there. Many times you have to do your own research, make up your own mind, and make your own administrative decisions. But there are many good products out there, and what is wonderful about raw cane juice, as we've learned on this show, is not only that it has it's the sweetest of the grass reeds, but it also has most of the benefits. And I loved what Dr. Daniel brought out in the aspect of the correlation between its growth as sugar cane, as the reed and the grass on the land, versus in the ocean like we have with the seagrass, the kelp, the sea vegetables. It's a beautiful comparison, I think, because I think we know that the plants and the animals, meaning the nutrients that we get, all the solutions to all the diseases are on this planet. It's just finding where they are and being observant and being able to discern it when we have it. And now, before we leave, we've got about 8 more minutes of the show. Would you, Dr. Daniel or Ray, would you like to add anything else that we didn't discuss for our listeners?
I have a brief bit of information I'd like to share concerning these products. We spoke about flavors, but not so much about temperature. And temperature is very important within the body, maintaining a homeostasis to function properly. So what we have in the sugarcane juice is a plant that can help the body. And we have the pungent flavor, or the cayenne and ginger, that help regulate the temperature when it comes to raising it up a little bit. So we do see another example of that these different plants and herbs have when they're put in combination. And very often it's the formula and not just the isolated ingredients.
Right,
so I just wanted to
and
bring attention to that.
That's the raw cane juice's intellectual property, those formulas. Just as it is your formula when you add those Chinese medicinal herbs to your carrier. I think that's a very important point, Dr. Dan, you brought out about temperature. I know I've done a lot of individuals that have been exposed to ammonia or through advanced nanomaterials, the breakdown of certain components that had an ammonia or an amine base. They all had lower body temperatures, meaning 95, 96, 97.3 versus the standard temperature being 98.6. This would be an alternative to heating up or to stimulating the regulatory system for temperature within the body.
Mm-hmm.
In an economical way, even when you don't have, like I specialize in radiant heat or any of this, if you didn't have access to that, but you had access to the raw cane juice, that would be another alternative, especially with the formulation of the spicy part to heat it up. That was the one that raised the temperature, correct? And the
Yeah,
sour lowered the temperature, correct? Or did
it's interesting, though, because the plants do have inherent intelligence in that when sometimes you'd see in a very hot culture or hot climate, the culture will use spices to actually cool themselves down. So it's like an adaptogen. It will adapt to what the body needs. So if it's the case where you're too hot, the detoxifier can actually cool you down by releasing the sweat. And in a cold temperature, it would just warm up the body and you'd be able to retain that heat.
Right, because like in Chinese, as being original merchants of many trades, including sugar, the Chinese, when they were doing on the Great Wall of China, and also in modern times when Japanese would share that guardship of the Great Wall, with many different military there, they would put cayenne pepper in their shoes so that they would stay warm.
Wow.
Old remedy, you know what I mean, to warm up their feet so that they wouldn't freeze on that wall. But at the same time, it's just what you said. Sometimes many of these remedies that we've heard from our grandparents or older generations or read in books are very beneficial to all of us now. And is there anything new coming about with raw cane juice, Ray, from your company?
Oh, there always is something in the works. Well, our newest product, which we didn't talk too much about, it's the Alkalizer Tonic, and that one actually has an opposing effect to the detox elixir. Instead of warming up and heating up, it cools, and it really amplifies the sugarcane's natural yin state. And so that one is often used for people who have insomnia. It's very relaxing and very calming. And then people who have very active skin, it's also very good in treatment for acne. And so we call it Liquid Beauty because chlorophyll, being a great oxygen conductor, is always good in beautifying the skin and then also naturally detoxifying the body as a deodorant and as something that moves stuff out of the GI tract. So the Alkalizer is one of the newer ones out of our grouping, and we have a couple other exciting things coming up, and one of them is going to be merging our land grass with the seagrass, and it's going to be using algae in our product as like a super fiber stitcher. And so that's going to be up and coming. We're looking at probably launching it around winter of this year. And, if you are interested in any of our products, you just can get on our website, sugarcanejuice.org, or we are carried at many of your local Whole Foods and your health food stores in the Los Angeles area. And we have our juice bar here in Hollywood, and we're in several different farmers markets. So just look up sugarcane juice, Google that, and I know we'll come up in the first page. So
yes. And Dr. Daniel Hutchinson, how would the audience get in touch with you if they need your expertise in acupuncture and Chinese, traditional Chinese medicine? Please share that with us.
Okay, well, currently they can locate me at my email address. It's spelled D as in Daniel, SUNN723@gmail.com. I'm currently working on my website. It's called Heliology, but that's not ready yet, so they can email me. And in upcoming months, I'm developing a couple of products, and we'll be traveling a little, so check up on me every once in a while.
Okay.
Well, let me also add this. If you have trouble reaching Daniel, you can always go on our website and just press the contact, and he's just a click away from our site, too.
Right, and also, audience, if you need either one of them, meaning raw cane juice or Dr. Daniel Hutchinson, just use our website, too, at onecellonelight.com. radio.com, and we will get them the information or get your message to them. I want to thank both of my guests for being on the show with me, and it was wonderful having y'all, and we learned a lot. I learned a lot, and I know this information will be very beneficial to the audience. And I'm just passed a note from my staff that we have a winner on this week's contest, which was on the raw sugar juice. The answer to it was China, and the winner is Ching Warmambo from Teaneck, New Jersey. So congratulations, Ching. I'm glad that you won the prize. And please, audience, listen to the other prizes the other shows for more prizes, okay? Thank you again, and God bless all. Bye-bye.
Informed, enlightened, alive and amplified. This is the Living Light Network.
On the ship, they would also look for new resources, the silk or whatever the commodity was in that area, so they take it back home and do it as merchants. And these individuals became the leaders of those merchants, whether it's from, as you said, 6,000 years B.C. from the Polynesians to the commercial trades of the Chinese in the year 5,000, all the way, through India in the 1000 B.C., all the way even Alexander the Great, as you mentioned, was trading, as the Persian king of Mesopotamia. The whole thing is they conquered lands and took over the rule of those lands for what was there as the resources that would bring to it. Classical example is the Roman Empire. They went from Italy throughout Europe all the way to England, and at the end for England for its materials of tin and lead, which they used in their pipes, and ended up being the demise because the pipes were made out of lead. That way.
Absolutely.
But
in fact, I think that where sugarcane becomes very interesting in history is actually when it moved into Europe, because it blew up. In fact, I look at American history and the history of the Americas, we wouldn't have the history that we had there not been sugar. It pretty much created the New World and the economical structure of the New World. With triangle trade and slavery, all of that was all part of the sugarcane industry.
Right, and look at the cost of sugar way back, and we're talking in the cost of sugar per pound in 1319, because I'm looking at a document here, AD. That's just after the Middle Ages and just after all the times when Genghis Khan and the Golden Horde with his grandson Batu came in, and, they ruled from the Baltics all the way through China. That's why the Great Wall was built to keep them out. But the thing is, you pay the tax, pay the due. The thing is that it was trading at $50 a pound back then. That's how rare that commodity is, versus now $2.99 or that a pound.
Yes. I know. I think I found something very similar, and it said that it was being traded at 2 shillings per pound, which if you converted it, we're looking at $100 a kilo in today's prices. So, and that's why they called it the white gold. Right. And so, and it was salt, made North Africa, and sugar made the New World, and it made Europe. And in fact, I think that, this was the big credit to Columbus's cap. When he wasn't able to find gold, he did find sugarcane. And, that's...
And that area for the audience is the West Indies or the Indies. We're talking Tortuga rather. What do you call it? It starts with a B. I can't even think of it right now. But there's Puerto Rico, there's Cuba, there's the other islands with Barbados. That's it, Barbados. Bahamas, all of those islands down there.
So from the point of discovery, he made it so that the sugarcane was basically like this guarded treasure of Persia. And he kept it guarded and kept it for Persia for a period of time, but then the Arab nations began to invade Persia, and at that point they stole the secrets. And it was one of like their great finds during their conquest, and they figured out how sugar was being extracted at that point from the reed. And so, and that was about 642 AD. When the Arabs got a hold of it, they just went crazy. They started immediately looking for real estate. They figured, you know, there must be like cheaper ways we can grow this, and we're going to grow lots of it. And so, of course, they naturally started to plant this all over North Africa and also southern Spain, which those were like somewhat like sub-Mediterranean weather. So
right, it had the
easy.
ideal weather, Ray, right, for growing this crop.
Pardon?
It had the ideal weather in those tropical zones.
Yes,
because sugar
exactly.
cane, as a reed, it needs water, like a good muckland, and it needs water and tropical areas because it won't grow in freezing ice weather.
No, not at all. I mean, it does grow in sub-Mediterranean areas. I mean, that's why it does grow here in California, like the sugar cane juice that we use is extracted from plants here. But the optimal growth area is like tropical, and that's when you get a higher yield even in the juice. But at this point, like in 642, they were just going with the best type of weather that they could use at that point, which, like Egypt, I mean, today, sugarcane juice is drank on the streets and in coffee shops. I mean, it's like a common libation that they have for energy, and so it's still being grown there in Egypt.
Right, and in these growing in these areas, what you're basically saying too to the audience, Ray, is that it has a long history. It even has, as the king of merchants in dealing with sugar on the international side, was the Chinese with the Olmecs, and then its expansion when they came into Hawaii and exposed those sugarcane industries, meaning before they became industry, commercialized. It was free trade in that as the sweet crop commodity for those times. Yes. And it's whoever was the best, if you want to put it, merchant, as in sailing, and that is the ones that brought it to other lands. There's the debate of who discovered America, whether it's Columbus, Leif Erikson and the Vikings versus, and there was a Chinese merchant that came in that I can't remember his name right now, that came from the West Coast and was supposed to be before all of them. And it's where, as they came, not only is the commodities of what they needed for keeping their, crew alive. Good afternoon, and welcome to the One Cell, One Light radio show with Dr. Hildegarde Staninger. That's me, commonly known as Dr. Hildy. I have a very special show today for our whole 2 hours and our title is Raw Sugar Juice. My guests are Miss Rey Koo, owner of Sugarcane Juice, and acupuncturist Dr. Daniel Hutchinson. Dr. Hutchinson is going to be joining us as he comes on board, and I think Miss Rey Koo is online with me right now. Are you there, Ray? I don't know. We lost her when we were just getting on the show. Oh, and audience, we can hear the ring. We're trying to get her. Hello, Ray. This is Dr. Hildy. We're live on the radio.
Hi, Dr. Hildy. How are you?
I am very well, dear. I was telling the audience that my show today is on raw sugar juice and its diversity which is raw sugar cane juice and the diversity, with yourself, Rey Koo, owner of Raw Sugar Juice, and also with a colleague and friend of yours, acupuncturist Dr. Daniel Hutchinson. He's going to join us as soon as we can get him connected on the line. And what I didn't get a chance to tell the audience that I'd like you to tell them a little about your company and what the company specializes in, which is the sugar juice, and then we can go into the history and everything of sugar. And audience, don't get confused with crystallized sugar that you buy in a bag at a grocery store or at other stores. We're talking about raw cane juice, which comes from the sugar cane. Okay, Ray?
That's correct. Yes. Well, thank you for having me on the show, Dr. Hildy. And I wanted to first start off with a little discussion on the history of sugar cane. And it was actually first discovered in two different places, and one was in Polynesia, and that was the first documentation. Actually, there were drawings of this particular tall reed grass. And at the same time, in India, there was also documentation of the sweet grass. By 510 AD, Persia was actually the first country that had a written documentation of this and said that they, in the midst of their invasion of India, had discovered this particular sweet gold, and it was sugar cane. And so at that point, the king of Persia was very wise, and he saw that there was going to be like an endless possibility with this particular reed, and that he was going to somehow extract the honey from this reed and not have to rely on the bees to extract this honey. And so
there in island countries that were named by or taken reign over by whatever the land was that claimed it for themselves. And at the same time, during that time, they had a lot of native, like the Carib Indians in Puerto Rico and the Caribbean versus the Incas, the Mayans in Mesoamerica. Any of these tribal nations, they knew the animals, the bond of animal nature and spirit to those areas, and they had a reverence for their different foods or the different commodities, and they would make different drinks or different juices out of honeys, and also this raw sugar juice, which you're going to explain. And before we leave the history, it's so important that not only during that time, sugar cane was the only thing, as you called it, the white commodity, the white sugar commodity. But after that, in 1813, we're talking from 6000 BC up until 1813, which is over 6,000 years. In France, they discovered, using in Russia, France, and Germany, the use of the sugar beet, so they could figure a way how to get the sugar out of the beet to make, again, raw sugar. Because in the Middle Ages, when they were making cakes and pastries, especially for weddings, that's what they were using, making those little, like, flower decorations out of the sugar, etc. So to have it at $50 a pound or $100 a kilo, you had to be very wealthy to have those wedding cakes, for your guests.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that was the thing is that I think one of the bonuses of England was that they were able to figure out, hey, you know what? Right now we can only make this available for the elite, but once we hit mass and we get the masses hooked into this, we will now dominate the world.
Correct.
With this.
Correct.
And so, and in fact, for the longest time, the ships, what they would only do is just bring in the raw crop. They would actually ship the actual wreath all the way up to Europe for fear that putting a refinement factory in the Caribbean would, allow some of these secrets to be leaked out. So they would spend all this money just sending the sugarcane up there and then having it refined up in the factory in Europe.
How long? Because some of these voyages, especially back then, we're not talking a cabin cruiser or, or the U.S. Navy elite, ship. What we're talking about is beautiful wooden ships made by hand and by the tools of that time. How long would a cut reed of the sugar last in that condition? Before, as soon as you cut it, you're going to have some type of fermentation, let alone squeezing it and getting the juice out in the fermentation, which we're going to go over, audience. But
once you cut the reed, the good thing is that it does cauterize itself right away. So, there is somewhat like of a seal, and with the wax that's around the actual cane husk and that polycosanol, that wax is a natural preservative.
Right.
So
and I forgot, too, that in a lot of in the sugarcane industry, they burn the fields, to get the bugs out, to get the rats, et cetera, this way.
Yes.
But they burn the fields, so that would also act as a cauterization on those reeds. And, it's like in the turns of the century when Jamaica came into its own power versus breaking off from England, or the different nations that were owning it, they lost a lot of the sugarcane industry, and they would bring people from India to work in the cane fields, just as our American cane fields, like in the Clewiston area of Florida, they would bring in Jamaicans to run that because they knew how to handle cane.
True.
Because it's like an acquired art. You have to work in it to get the experience of how to do the cane, because you can grow anything, but it's some of those stalks. I know in the Clewiston area are the original seedlings, the original reeds that it's 2011, but they were planted in the 1920s, late 20s, 1930s. They last for a very long time, the plant does, the actual reed.
Oh, it's absolutely a craft. Growing this. In fact, one of the farms that we pull from, we call her the Queen of Cane because she's, first of all, fifth-generation grower down in San Diego. Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. We're here.
Okay.
We're still on the road.
We're cut off. And her claim to fame is, I grow the straightest stalk with the longest segments. And when we first started in this industry, we're like, okay, we want the sweetest stalk. She's like, no, you want the straightest with the longest segments. And now that we've been doing this for a while, she was amazing that over all of these decades, their family, that was their focus, how to grow the straightest with the longest segments. Because once you have that cane grow straight, you're going to get a lot more plants per acre, and then also, once you've harvested it, it's much easier to juice on the machine. And so, she's able to really maintain and expand her clientele for her particular crop. And the segments, the longer the segments are, the more juice you're going to get and the better of a chew you're going to get, or else you're just chewing like the knot. Because, audience, I don't know, I'm going to assume a lot of people have seen sugar cane. There's several segments. It's like a tree trunk. And
like bamboo. Like bamboo.
Yeah,
bamboo.
Very similar. And so once you get into that joint, that's virtually non-chewable. It's about like the texture of birch. So, and it's amazing because, we've worked a little closely with our Hmong farmers who farm up in Central Valley, and we've had a chance to do some cutting, and it's